Welcome to the Own Your Best Life podcast. I'm May Emson, your host, leadership and mindset coach. Here, we talk all things spiritual, mindset, business, leadership, and wellness for the modern seeker who wants to align their life with purpose and inspiration. We'll cover career changes, stress management, meditation, energy, intuition, and more. Each episode holds spiritual and practical tools to help you live a life of your wildest dreams without getting burnt out along the way. Ready to live a life on your own terms? This is the Own Your Best Life podcast.
So welcome, friends, to episode number 56 of the Own Your Best Life podcast. So changing our lives. It often involves a bit of faith in what we don't fully understand yet or what we don't know. And specifically, how do we create a future for ourselves when we don't understand the framework of what we are experiencing, how we interact with others, and the world itself around us? And if you've ever wondered what the Akashic Field is and how the world of science confirms our intuition of the interconnectedness of all of these things, today we're going to dive into the work of Erno Laszlo and his book, Science and the Akashic Field, an integral theory of everything. Okay, so I'm going to start with chapter 1 because it begins with the challenge of creating what they call a TOE, a theory of everything. TOE, theory of everything. And by everything, he means all the kinds of things we observe, all the things we experience and encounter, whether they are physical things, systems, or things of the mind and consciousness. So how do we explain how every quote-unquote thing in the universe came to be? And I know this may be like a very big question. So we're going to start to break it down a little bit using the quote-unquote quantum vacuum, which you can think of it as this like virtual energy sea. And we know how particles known as quanta, which are the basic elements of reality, how they evolve, how they interact, and how they're generated in this quantum vacuum. So this is about real things in the form of particle or anti-particle pairs. Beyond what we currently know about the laws of energy, he describes how information is how we account for the presence of a significant number of particles in the universe that is neither matter nor energy. And this information isn't data or what a person knows, but it extends beyond the mind of our individual or collective persons. So it's not something we produce, but it is present as this fundamental factor in nature, and it just governs the evolution of the basic elements into a complex system. So I know this may sound a little bit confusing, or maybe you're just not normally thinking in terms of this, but this is why, for me, it was an important topic to go into, because we often want to understand it better, but we don't completely. And so I'm going to try as much as I can to help you understand through his book. I highly recommend you going out and reading it yourself, and I'll put a link to it at the bottom of this podcast as well, so that you can find it for yourself and go through it in great detail. But I'm going to highlight what I found to be pretty interesting. And so now we move into chapter 2, which is the search for a genuine integral theory of everything. And we start to review some of the drivers for what we consider this next paradigm shift in science. Because you have to remember that the way we think about the way the world works is a little bit of this older way of thinking. So when we're talking about these drivers that I'm going to talk to you about now, this is really about a paradigm shift, a change in the way we fundamentally think about the way the world works. And I guarantee you, when you really start to hone into this, when you really start to understand this to a different degree, something changes in you, because you suddenly realize you have a lot more of the ability to unlock your future potential and the potential of the world around you when you get these concepts. And so again, I'm presenting it to you. It's up to you whether you want to, dive into it more, or whether you feel this is something that you resonate with. But that's your choice and that's your decision. So I'm sharing what has resonated with me. All right, so let's talk about these drivers. So these drivers of this shift in science are what we consider to be really radically different ideas. Maybe they're different hypotheses that are put forth by highly respected scientists, and they are actually receiving serious attention in these scientific communities. Yet they are still mind-boggling descriptions of the real world. And so Erno Laszlo has been, sharing some of these examples, and one of them is this 10 to the 100th universes hypothesis that is advanced by a physicist named Hugh Everett in 1955, and he describes what is considered to be a parallel universes hypothesis, which is based on this interesting finding in quantum physics that when a particle is not observed, it is not in one state. Yet when it is observed, it is then in a single state, like any ordinary thing that you know and see and can sense with your bodily senses. This means that in a world where a quantum, such as an electron, has a 50% probability of going up and a 50% probability of going down, there are two parallel universes at play. One in which this electron is always going up, and the other in which this electron is always going down. This also means that in each of these two universes, there is an observer, and there is a measuring instrument, which means that these two outcomes, in these two outcomes, you have universes and measuring instruments that exist at the same time. Therefore, you'll have a large number, which is why they talk about 10 to the 100th, a large number of universes that exist in the order of 10 to the 100th, including observers and measuring instruments. This one I find really interesting because I've often felt sometimes this idea, and I've spoken to it a little bit about this parallel universe, that I feel that parallel universes exist where the thing we want is already there, or it's happening, or it already happened. And sometimes I feel that we all have the same situation that might be present in our lives, but you see how we all live very differently. And we might see a fact or a circumstance or a change happen, or even a person walking down the street, and we'll have completely individual and different experiences of that same exact thing. And I've always likened it to parallel universes. Like, we're all experiencing and living parallel universes on the same kind of plane, but in a very different way from each other. And you can take it a step further and say, even within yourself, in your own circumstances, could you have multiple ways for this one thing to shape up, for this one thing to be? And this leads to kind of this next one, which is the next hypothesis Erno Laszlo talks about, is the universe is observer created. This means that instead of all these individual universes that branch off from each other, all of these possible universes exist simultaneously at the same time. And what we do is we select the path that leads to this universe, and when we do that, the other universes cancel out. I think of this very much as this theory of choice. And what we choose in our present then determines our past. This is huge. If you just imagine how the way that you have had maybe what you call or think of as this terrible situation happen to you in your past, and how that can change by what we choose in our present. This is what I think about when I think about how we can make failure an impossibility. Because we could let things just be these terrible things, or we can, in our present, choose to use them as a building block, or choose to see a lesson, or choose it to mean something that is helpful to us. We can also choose it to mean something that doesn't help us, or that hinders us and lets us feel like we're incomplete, or that we've been broken and will never get fixed. But we can, in our present, choose something that then determines our past. So this is such an interesting point. I think it's a real shift in the way that we can think. And I think that if you really lock into this and start to understand how if all these possible universes can exist simultaneously, and when we select the path that leads to this universe, the rest cancels out, that you could shift in a more massive way than you could have ever believed, and that will actually change the past. Right? That will actually change the past. A little, like, one other point around this is that Stephen Hawking from Cambridge University and Thomas Hertog of the European Nuclear Research Organization, who actually came up with a related mathematical answer, also claim that there is no definite initial state of the universe and no starting point. So I'll let you just sit with that, because I think a lot of times we like to think of things with a finite beginning and end, and when you think of it almost as no beginning and end, it starts to unravel a lot of things for us. I know I was talking to Kayla the other day, and she was trying to understand, like, well, where did this all start? And I don't like to impose beliefs, so I try to offer up options, such as there are some beliefs that there was a creator and this was created, right? There are other beliefs that this was always there, but in different ways, shapes, and forms, and it kind of evolves over time to shift into new ways of being, but there wasn't a beginning or an end. As you can imagine, these can be hard concepts to grasp for a 5 or 6-year-old, but even for grown adults. So just let it sit with you. Don't feel like you have to force these things on to yourself or believe in them. I think it's just interesting to think through and understand maybe different hypotheses about the way the world works, specifically ones that have some scientific support and are being talked about in these communities. So another hypothesis is that the universe is a hologram. You guys might have heard of this a little bit more. So what is a hologram? A hologram is a pattern of 2 dimensions that generate an image in 3 dimensions. So, you think about a lot of the holographic images that you think about maybe in movies. You remember seeing, like, okay, some light thing shines out that is 2-dimensional, but it creates this person or figure in front of you that looks 3-dimensional. Okay, so, like, think of it in that term. So when you're trying to understand thermodynamics, because, obviously who isn't, but it matters because the reason that this all came about is in thermodynamics, you are trying to understand how disorder can never decrease in a closed system, which we consider the universe to be a closed system. So if that is true, you can't decrease all of this disorder. How do we account for matter that collapses into black holes? So Leonard Susskind of Stanford University and Gerard Hooft of the University of Utrecht came up with the idea that the information inside the black hole isn't actually lost, but it's stored. It's stored holographically on the surface. So the universe can then be considered a many-dimensional hologram. So just remember that image that gets projected that creates this more dimensional thing than the thing that created in the beginning. So it's a many-dimensional hologram, and it just has a smaller number of dimensions at its periphery, at its edge. Okay, so then it becomes this more massive thing than it is, and that's how you end up accounting for all of this matter. Okay, now we move into the 3rd chapter. So you can see those 3 concepts, these concepts of a holographic universe, the concept of a holographic universe, the concept of an observer-created universe, where you can determine your past by choosing your present, a concept of parallel universes, all can allow there to be this shift in your understanding of how the world works. So it moves into this 3rd chapter, which is really about interconnectedness. So it breaks down this idea of coherence. Coherence is really important because the idea of coherence is how changes in one part of a coherent, interconnected system can change the other part of the system. And this speaks to the idea of parts being non-local. Non-local means that they are not limited to where they are, but they're in some ways connected to and everywhere throughout the system. This is really important because it helps explain these transpersonal connections. What do I mean by transpersonal? It's the idea of telepathic powers where you can transfer all these different forms of thoughts and images from one person to another. It also helps explain telesomatic powers, right? Somatic is the body, where you can affect the body non-locally. So when you think of spiritual healing, when you think of prayer, this is what's happening through the use of focused intention, effort, and energy transmission. So when I do Reiki or when I do readings, this is how I start to understand this is what the whole non-local experience is like. People ask me, can you do this not in person? And for the most part, I've mainly done a lot of readings or Reiki work or energy work virtually. And I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but this idea of non-local and not being limited to where you physically are, you can start to see if I actually tap into that power of transferring thought forms, transferring images from one person to another, affecting the body non-locally, there's tremendous potential and power in our abilities that everyone has. It's not just reserved for a select few, but it's something you can cultivate. So let's go to chapter 4, which is where the Akashic Field comes in. And the way it comes in is this idea of information, and information specifically in nature. So what is the Akashic Field? So Laszlo, the author, describes the term Akasha. So we know Akasha to be a Sanskrit word that means the all-encompassing medium that underlies and becomes all things. So it's the underlying and becoming, right? So it's this medium that underlies and becomes all things. So it's not something that is felt through our bodily senses, but it's something that we can reach through spiritual practice. It's something that we reach through a disciplined or spiritual way of life, through yoga. And when you think of prana, prana is this life force energy, and it acts upon the akasha, right? This medium, and it gives life to it. So Laszlo states that the Akashic vision is this cyclic universe of a metaverse that creates universe after universe. It is, in the world of the new physics world, the unified quantum vacuum. You can consider it the unified field out of which all particles and all atoms emerge. And therefore, when you think about space and the space around you, it isn't truly empty. We think it is because we can't see it. But this quantum vacuum, the space around us, is filled with energy and is an energetic field. So this, when you can start to shift into this way of sensing beyond the senses, which sounds confusing, but that's the next kind of level of being able to tap into the unified field or this quantum field around you. You can start to feel into energy, and you start to use this field to be able to transmit or to receive information. So the next chapters go into a lot more detail about all the studies around coherence, the experiments, the research that has been done around non-local coherence specifically, which is how something in one place can affect something in another place. And this has been done across cultures and time in all sorts of healing aspects, in all sorts of prayer aspects. He talks a lot more about how telepathic and telesomatic experiences and how all of this works. So, why did I get interested in this topic? And how does this all fit into all the things that you're learning through these episodes and these podcasts around owning your best life? And so my personal story around my journey into the world of the Akashic Records and the Akashic Field started when I was at Kripalu, which is this wellness center up in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. And I remember I had no idea what Akashic Records were, but I saw something about how you can schedule a reading, an Akashic Records reading, and I had no idea what it was. And I remember a year later I was on social media and happened upon a Akashic Records reader through a recommendation. And this person was teaching others how to read Akashic Records. And I just had this deep interest already in learning more about energy and intuition and all of these kinds of transpersonal connections due to my own personal experiences of telepathic or visioning or tapping into energy or prayer, healing, all of that. And how it actually, became something that I knew through experience was real. And so I pursued it. And what I couldn't understand was how it all worked. I don't know still that I grasped every last thing scientifically about it, but it helps me to understand and know why I can read other people or how this all works and the synchronicities that keep coming to play, the miracles that keep happening, the support that I keep getting when I ask for it. And all of the brilliant ways that I see the people that I work with begin to transform and change their lives. It is sometimes feels like this magical thing that can't be explained, but it can be. So what does this mean to you? So I've pondered this question long and hard because sometimes things that don't seem tangible can seem useless. And I know if you're listening to this, you're probably not of that camp, but I know there's a part of you probably like me that's a very logical in nature that tries to discern and stay really grounded in this present world around how things come to be and what do you want to use and what do you not want to use. So again, you can always listen to all the things that I share or anyone is sharing and take it in your own perspective and your own knowing and experience it and experiment with it and just see how it works for you so that you come to an understanding that is your own. So I remember thinking, well, what is this purpose of all of this stuff? I had interest in it and I had experiences with it, but why pursue it and why do I want to learn about it? Right? All of these things can seem like this magic trick. It's just something that helps you feel good about yourself, right? Like, oh, faith, it's a crutch, or it's just something that feels good. Or it just helps to explain the way the world works in a certain way so that you feel good. But it isn't real, right? So there's always those thoughts and those voices that can come into play too. But what I've discovered, and again, this is through my own practice and knowing and the work that I've done on myself and with the work that I've done with others, is that the quickest and simplest way to change the tangible world in front of my eyes is to change the invisible world behind my eyes. When I go within, I understand way more quickly what the best course of action is to take. I make more accurate, I make quicker decisions, and while I may not always follow my intuition, I know that this is where free will comes in. I know this is where I have choices. I'm not just predestined to live this one way of life. I get to live into my purpose and passion, and I may spend a lifetime trying to fight against it. That's also a choice too. I might also spend a lifetime aligned with it. That's also a choice. And so this is what has allowed me to understand that I can create a more loving world by having compassion and kindness for others, for example. It's allowed me to know that my impact, no matter how seemingly small, can have a large ripple effect. So this is all behind the idea of why are you here? What do you want to do? And why do you want to do it? If you feel that there is no impact on other people or the world around you by your actions, then you will likely not do anything that feels like it has impact beyond your own personal space and life. But if you believe in the quantum field, if you believe that you can affect people and places and things energetically, then you might try to be more aware of your intention, your actions, and your behaviors. You might be more conscientious about how you can help. You might think that you actually have more personal power than you've ever realized. And And that is huge, right? That is a big realization for us to have, that no matter what we have in our circumstances, time, energy, and space, we can always tap into this power of the energy around us, and that power is limitless. And this is when you realize that one thought, one prayer, one healing wish can change the course of my life or someone else's. Truly understanding this actually can take a whole lifetime, because you begin to try to shed all of the skins of materiality, of superficial worthiness, of goal seeking for external achievements, and comparing yourself to others and judging yourself and judging others. And at the end of the day, you are the only person. You're the only person who will know if it's worth it, right? This is a journey that you go on, whether you want to or not, by yourself. You actually have to decide at some point or another if this is the way you want to move in your life, if you want to accept that you have a lot more power than you've ever imagined, if you want to accept that your thoughts and your prayers and your wishes and your desires are actually as real as the phone in front of you, the computer, the money in your bank account. You have to decide. And this is a choice that only you can make. And when you try it and you test it and you learn from it, you're the one that will decide whether it's worth it or not to start to live from the world behind your eyes and to give the world behind your eyes more authority than the world in front of your eyes. So my challenge to you is to begin to experiment. Just experiment with listening to the energetic current of all of the information that is around you. It will tell you how to respect people. It will tell you how to love people in the way they want to be loved. It will tell you how to make the money you want to make. It will tell you how to have the peace that you're looking for, the freedom that you want. And you may not want to listen to it, but that is a completely different thing than not realizing that the answer has been and always has been there. It's inside of you, waiting to be tapped into. As soon as you decide to get still enough to let go of all of the other voices and to listen to your inner guidance, to listen to what you are hearing, the images, the words, the sounds, the feelings, and the vibrations that lead you to feeling whole, expansive, and committed to your next step, or committed to a transformation, or committed to just feeling a little bit more at ease than you did a second ago. So this energetic current of information, this Akashic Field, it's informing you. It's informing you all the time about your past, your present, and your future. And you just have to be willing, and this is on you, and if you decide to take up this challenge, you just have to be willing to tap into that information all around you. All right, my friends. So that is it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode on science and the Akashic Field. And again, if you want to learn about this even more, you can read the book, Science and the Akashic Field by Erno Laszlo, link in the show notes, so that you can dive into all the experiments and the research behind it at a greater detail. And I wanted to let you know that if you're interested in doing more of this kind of work, if you're interested in leading life from the inside out, in this month's intuitive leadership coaching, we'll be covering how to take aligned action from a place of wholeness. How do you know what decisions you're making and the actions that you're taking that will actually move you forward in the direction that you want. And so it's living from the inside out and starting to rewrite and reprogram the ways that we show up in this world and the ways that we take action, so that we can start to create this future and pull in all this work of the Akashic Field, of the quantum and the vacuum of energy that is all around you, and how do we tap into it and take action from there. And so each month we'll break down topics like this and help you take action, help you move forward with clarity, with peace. And just like I did today, a way to bridge both the practical and the spiritual, because the spiritual energy is what will drive us. It will drive all of the other things that we want in our life. But we must take action. We must do things in this practical world to make it so. And so we bridge the gap, we take the actions, and we move forward. And so if you're interested in being a part of this program and joining with me on this journey, you can go to mayemson.com/contact. That's www.mayemson.com/contact. Reach out and you can learn more. All right. I love you, my friends. Have a beautiful, beautiful week, and I will talk to you next time.
Thanks so much for joining us this week on Own Your Best Life. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, can you please rate and review on iTunes? I would so appreciate it. Share it with a friend, take a screenshot of it, and tag @MayEmson. This helps continue to get the word out. For more show notes and resources, check out www.mayemson.com. You'll have all the links to everything you heard here today. Thanks so much for listening. It's time to own your best life.